I think being in the Lake District is most of what gives me the energy and the inspiration to train, to be, physically the strongest and the best that I can be. And often I think that if I'd have grown up somewhere else, then I'd never have discovered any of it. And it's an important thing, it really means a lot to me, definitely. Achieving through adventure, going out and having adventures and planning them when I'm out running on the fells. And no 2 days here are the same. The views are different every day. There's the crisp, bright sunlight and dryness you get in winter sometimes. There's days when it's so clagged over, so wet that it's like breathing through a wet dish rag, and you just soak every minute and want it to come back down to your hot bath and a pint. All of the days are different, and you come to value them all differently. And it's things like slicing through the dawn on my bike, riding the hills and the passes of the Lake District, the surge of pride you feel when you're looking back down at where you've come, and realising you're that bit stronger than the last time. And when you're swimming in open water and you feel like the only person who's ever done it, or you're out on a crag doing a bit of rock climbing, and you wonder, has anyone ever seen this view from exactly the same perspective that I just have? The magic of all of those things, they've enabled me to live an enriching life, even when circumstances, and personal situations that I've got into have been really tough. And I kind of think it's like a talisman that I carry. It's something that can get me through anything, I've almost come to believe, and it's a wonderful thing that I'd swap for nothing else. And all of that, it encapsulates just a tiny part, a really tiny part of what summiting Everest will eventually mean to me. Stories around the Lake District in different places about the Roman Legion on Cetafel and a Lancastrian bombing plane that you could see at the bottom of Wastwater in certain lights. And then I went to school and I had such a hard time socially that when I lost my confidence, I just lost my fascination with all that. And I was disorganised, scatterbrained, you might say. I have a developmental disorder known as dyspraxia, and what that means is I struggle to keep all my stuff in one place. I might have to check a certain door 100 times to see if I've locked it. And if you're walking in front of me, I might not be able to tell how far away you are, so that I stand on your heels all the time. And I couldn't dance, I couldn't throw a netball, didn't move particularly gracefully, and the kids called me spastic, spacker. Teenagers, if they sense that you're different, or that you can't take it in any way, then they just victimise you. And I remember when I was maybe 13 or 14, I overheard one boy saying to another, if you woke up next to that, then you'd know you failed. And it's stayed with me ever since. It's haunted me. I was a haunted teenager. I became a haunted woman when I was at university. And I just had no idea really of what I could be or what I wanted to be. And then when I was about 23, something happened. I was pretty unhappy in some ways because I was applying for job after job and getting nowhere. And then I started volunteering for the National Trust. And I learned about the people in the world. I learned about how they've responded to the environment over time. And I was just suddenly became the happiest that I'd been, and I discovered a whole set of skills I didn't know I had. And then I would say that the idea of Everest, first reared its head in my imagination during an incredibly difficult time for my entire family. I was about 24 years old at the time, and it was a bolt out of the blue. My cousin Johnny, he'd just been 25. He caught melanoma, which is a kind of skin cancer for which there's no cure. There was nothing anyone could have done for him, and where do you go to recover from that kind of thing? And I was not in a good place in many ways at the time. I was volunteering for the National Trust, which had taught me a lot about nature and the world and how people have variously responded over time to different landscapes. But I was none the wiser about what I actually wanted to do with my life. It was kind of, in a sense, like I'd left university and I'd just entered this world where there was no real place for me. And I sat there at Johnny's funeral and I thought, well, it should have been me, not him really, because, he had a job, he was an achiever, whereas I was at a loose end. And then there was a clip of him, and he bungee jumped into a gorge, and this was in New Zealand. And the first time he kind of shied away from the edge of the precipice with this little self-deprecating laugh that was very characteristic of him. And the second time he tried it, he flew by his ankles into space, and it was a beautiful moment, and it made me think, I've not got a second left to waste. I'd been inspired by a film I saw coincidentally. It was called The Wildest Dream, with Conrad Anker, an American climber, and Leo Houlding, who's actually from Cumbria. And it was just the two of them, and they were on the north face of Everest, and they were trying to recreate George Mallory and Andrew Irvin's climb in the 1920s. So they set out, and they were wearing these primitive kind of hobnail boots. It was kind of in the era when ice axes and crampons, if they existed, they were heavy, they were clunky, they were comparatively newfangled things. And they were kind of the camaraderie these two men were experiencing as they were managing to climb 60-degree ice slopes in, just a few layers and some hobnail boots. It was extraordinary, and my imagination was captivated by the landscape that they were progressing through. It was raw black rock. It was glaciers with kind of these huge moors of crevasses. It was sterile. It was isolated. It was just them and the curvature of the earth. And I looked at this one particular photograph of Johnny that I can still see in my mind's eye, and he's smiling, this really dazzling smile. He's standing on a beach, and there's a ray of light just shining down on him, and he looks young and he looks innocent. And I just thought, kind of standing there with tears streaming down my face, thinking, how does one recover from this sort of blow? I'm gonna leave that photograph somewhere high up for him to find one day, and I was heartened by that thought, and it was a thought that allowed me to move on, and it gave me something to work towards. well, I'm an endurance challenge. I don't know for sure that I'm going to complete it. It's about stretching myself a little bit further every time, kind of pushing my body to its limits. And it's also about kind of realising what the muscles and sinews of me are capable of physically, but also about kind of testing the capacity of my mind to address the need to keep going when all of my instincts are screaming at me to stop pushing. And the same principle underpins the mega triathlon, possibly on an unprecedented scale, and it's apt in a lot of ways that 2017 is the year I'm taking this on, because it was originally the year I'd said I would like to try and climb Everest with my guide, who is Tim Rosedale, the Keswick B&B owner, who's summited Everest 5 times. And to the best of my knowledge, he's the only person who's ever successfully done this. And it was his invention back in 2015 when he was motivated by a need to do something for the families of 3 of his Sherpa comrades who were killed when an earthquake hit Everest Base Camp. So similarly, personal reasons really why I'm putting myself through so much pain. In my case, it's my little sister Martha. She's 15 years old and she's what we call profoundly autistic. And what that means is, for her, she needs help with everyday tasks, such as eating her food, dressing, and she's never going to be able to live independently, or very much doubt it. My parents are, you might say, middle-aged, and for them it's a case of they never really get a lot of time to themselves, and don't get to do kind of the things that they enjoy. And I kind of look at them and I think how many other families are in a similar situation where the future is just a huge source of anxiety. And that's why I approached a Penrith charity called Eden Mencap. And I said to them, look, I'd like to kind of, all of the sponsorship money that I can gather from doing this, I would like to go towards the careers and education of people like Martha. And they said, sure, there's scope for that, we can put your money towards that. And so all of the pounds that you give me, that I hope you'll be generous enough to sponsor me, in return for my putting myself through what you might call a lot of gnarly suffering, that they're going towards, that I'm striving with every bit of myself that I can to make sure that people like Martha get the opportunity to make a valuable contribution to society and be good citizens despite their setbacks. And I feel like I need to kind of introduce the mega triathlon a little bit now. So it starts off with a 112-mile bike sportive, and that's the Fred Whitten. Been going about 60 years now. It goes over every single one of the Lake District passes. So that's got all your hills like Hardknot Pass, which is 1 and 3 gradient from Eskdale. So that's kind of like walking up quite a steep path on the side of the hill, except cycling. And then I'm swimming a length of Derwentwater, which is 3.5 miles and a very long time to spend on your own, surrounded by water and your own thoughts. And I'm kicking it, I'm kind of wrapping it all up with a Bob Graham round, which in fell running terms is just elite. I'm not claiming to be elite myself, but it's about endurance, it's about what your mind's capable of. It's 66 miles and 42 peaks. When Bob Graham, who originally did this, I think it was for his 40th birthday or something a number of decades ago, he set off in plimsolls and a pyjama top with boiled eggs in his pockets. I don't think he really knew what he was setting out to try and achieve, but it ended up being these 42 summits, sort of all the main ranges of the Lake District really. So you start kind of northwest near Keswick, Skiddaw, that region. You go over to the Helvellyn range, from there you go to Grasmere and Langdale, then from there you go over Scafell to Wasdale, then back round Great Gable and that to Newlands Valley and Keswick again. It's about the centre of Everest, I think. So it's and it's all on really technical terrain, so it's any single one of these things is a big undertaking in its own right, but I'm looking at the whole lot in 48 hours, so hopefully you think I deserve a bit of support.